The Gulf of America, a new identity for a strategic waterway. In this hypothetical situation, the Gulf of Mexico is rebranded as the Gulf of America, an act that many would interpret as part of a broader effort by Trump, or any nationalist leader, to assert American dominance over key geographical landmarks. The renaming could be seen as symbolic of a desire to reshape the narrative of the region, focusing on American interests and sovereignty over the Gulf. This act would be consistent with Trump's America First policy, where asserting national pride and reasserting U.S. control over significant areas would play a prominent role. The geopolitical significance of the Gulf of America. The Gulf of Mexico, now dubbed the Gulf of America, continues to hold immense geopolitical and economic importance, not just for the U.S., but for the countries that surround it, Mexico, Cuba, and the various nations in the Caribbean. Energy and resources, the U.S. energy powerhouse. The Gulf has long been one of the most vital sources of energy in the world. It is home to a substantial portion of the U.S. oil and natural gas production, particularly in the form of offshore drilling in the outer continental shelf. This is where companies extract millions of barrels of crude oil and billions of cubic feet of natural gas every year, making it a central hub for energy security in the Western Hemisphere. The U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, consistently ranks the Gulf region as one of the most important oil-producing areas in the country. If Trump's renaming were to symbolize a renewed effort to consolidate U.S. interests in energy independence, it could signal an even more aggressive push to exploit these resources, including expanding offshore drilling and reducing regulations that impede such activities. As global energy dynamics shift, especially with the increasing prominence of renewable energy, the Gulf's role as a key energy hub would continue to be crucial. The U.S. might double down on extracting resources here, not only for domestic use but to maintain its position as a top energy exporter. The Gulf of America would therefore continue to be at the epicenter of global energy flows, supplying oil to not only North America but also to the rest of the world. Trade routes and commerce, the heart of the Western Hemisphere. The Gulf of America, as a critical commercial waterway, connects the U.S. with key international trade routes. Major ports like Houston, New Orleans, and Miami make the Gulf a central hub for importing and exporting goods, everything from oil to agricultural products, electronics, and textiles. The region supports an immense shipping industry, including bulk carriers, container ships, and cruise liners. For the U.S., these ports are vital for trade, particularly with Latin America, the Caribbean, and beyond. The Panama Canal, just a short distance away, connects the Gulf to the Pacific Ocean, making this region even more pivotal for transoceanic trade. The renaming of the Gulf could, in theory, be a way for the U.S. to further emphasize its role as the dominant player in regional and international commerce. As trade tensions continue to evolve, particularly between the US and China, the Gulf of America could become even more important as a shipping lane that bypasses many of the world's most congested or politically sensitive areas. Military presence, dominating the strategic waters. The United States Navy has long maintained a robust presence in the Gulf, including major naval bases in places like Florida, Texas, and Louisiana. The Gulf of America is home to the U.S. Fifth Fleet, which is responsible for maritime security in the Caribbean and the Atlantic Ocean. The U.S. Coast Guard also plays a critical role in patrolling the Gulf waters, ensuring that the region remains free from illegal activities such as drug trafficking, piracy, and human trafficking. By renaming the Gulf, the Trump administration, or any administration seeking to project American power, could strengthen the narrative of American hegemony in the Western Hemisphere. The U.S. Navy's operations in the Gulf could increase in scale and scope, ensuring that the waters remain secure and that American interests in the region are not compromised by external threats. Furthermore, the strategic location of the Gulf could also lead to more military cooperation with other regional powers, like Mexico and the Caribbean nations, further solidifying the U.S.'s influence in the area. Environmental concerns, the reality of control and responsibility. While renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America might be seen as a symbolic gesture of American dominance, it would also bring to the forefront several critical environmental issues. The Gulf has suffered from multiple environmental disasters, including the infamous 2010 BP oil spill. As offshore drilling ramps up, so too do the risks of oil spills, habitat destruction, and biodiversity loss. The U.S. government would be under increased scrutiny to protect the Gulf's ecosystems and the livelihoods of the millions of people who depend on it for their livelihood, especially those in the fishing and tourism industries. If the Gulf were to become a more central part of America's identity, there could be greater pressure on the U.S. to enact stronger environmental protection laws, both to safeguard the region and to counter the negative impact of overexploitation. Additionally, climate change poses an existential threat to the Gulf of America, with rising sea levels, stronger hurricanes, and increased flooding threatening both the ecosystem and human infrastructure. As the largest nation in the region, the U.S. would have an enormous responsibility in mitigating the effects of these environmental challenges and taking a leadership role in international climate change efforts. Latin America's response, regional reactions. The renaming of the Gulf would likely not be welcomed by all of America's neighbors. Mexico and Cuba, two key nations bordering the Gulf, might view the change as an arrogant assertion of U.S. dominance in the region. This could fuel nationalist sentiments within these countries, potentially heightening tensions and prompting them to distance themselves from American influence. Moreover, the name Gulf of America could be seen as a subtle reminder of U.S. imperialism, a historical legacy that many Latin American countries still view with suspicion. The U.S. might find itself navigating a delicate diplomatic balance, ensuring that this symbolic gesture does not escalate into greater geopolitical friction with its southern neighbors. Cultural significance and national identity. Renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America would also carry cultural implications. The Gulf is deeply tied to the identities and histories of the people living along its shores, whether they are in the US, Mexico, or the Caribbean. For many, the name Gulf of Mexico holds cultural significance, especially in the context of Mexican heritage and its role in the history of the region. In Mexico, the Gulf is an important part of national identity, with cultural landmarks, traditions, and coastal communities closely connected to the water. The name change could be seen as a disrespectful attempt to erase the historical and cultural ties Mexico has with the Gulf, further exacerbating tensions. Conclusion: symbolism meets reality. The idea of renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America would represent a bold move by the United States to assert its dominance and reshape the region in its image. It would serve as a symbolic act, one that could reshape American national identity, reinforce its strategic interests in the region, and perhaps provoke diplomatic fallout with its neighbors. In the end, whether one sees this as an act of geopolitical genius or an empty gesture, the Gulf's strategic importance remains unchanged. It continues to be a critical energy hub, a vital trade route, and a location of global military significance. What truly matters, however, is how the US and its neighbors manage the real challenges facing this body of water, environmental, economic, and diplomatic, in the decades to come.